Welcome back, everyone, to Small Town Bible Questions. I'm your host, Raphael, and I like to answer Bible questions and anything that's related to Christianity. In this video, we're going to continue our series on answering pro-choice arguments and slogans. So if you missed the first video, I'll leave a link up here for you to click on and so you can catch up. Also, if you don't want to miss the upcoming videos, subscribe and hit that bell icon. That way you get notifications whenever I drop new videos. That being said, let's get started with today's video. In today's video, we're going to be going over 4 common arguments that pro-choicers like to use to justify their position on abortion. These arguments are best known by the acronym S.L.E.D. So let's take a look at them. The first argument that we're going to be covering is size. Now, some pro-choicers will like to say that because of the fetus or the embryo inside of the mother is so tiny and that it doesn't resemble anything.
So tiny
that it isn't a human and one can get rid of it if they want. Now to that, we would point to them and say that whether one is small or not is irrelevant as to whether or not you're a human with intrinsic values. For example, my 8-year-old is smaller than me, and so is my 6-year-old, and so is my 3-year-old, and so is my 2-year-old, and my 2-month-old.
How many kids you got?
They're all smaller than me. But it doesn't mean that they're not humans and that they don't have intrinsic value and that I can just get rid of them if I wanted to. And just in the same sense, just because the baby inside of the mother's womb is so tiny and small, it doesn't mean that it's not a human and that we can just terminate its life. So the argument from size is really not a good argument. The second argument that we're going to be going over is level of development. Now, some pro-choicers would say that because the baby inside of its mother's womb is not fully developed yet, that you can terminate its life because it's not a human. And to that, we would point out that our brains don't even fully develop till the age of 25. And my 8-year-old is less developed than me, and all my other kids are way less developed than me. But that doesn't mean that they're not humans and that I can choose to terminate their lives just because they're not fully developed. Not only that, but there's also people who are born without body parts and they're less developed than full-grown adults, but that doesn't mean that because they're missing certain body parts and they're less developed than other humans that we can terminate their lives too. And so level of development is not a good argument either. The third argument that we're going to be going over is environment. Now, some pro-choicers would say that because the baby is still inside of its mother's womb, that it's not a human and it doesn't have any intrinsic value or right to life. And to that, we would point to them and say that the environment that we're in does not determine whether or not we're humans. So, for example, let's say that I was in space or underwater or somewhere deep inside of a cave. Me being in those places does not determine whether or not I'm a human. And in the same sense, just because the baby is in its mother's womb does not mean that it's not a human. So the argument from environment is not a good argument either. The fourth argument that we're going to be going over is dependency. Now, some pro-choicers would say that because the baby inside of its mother is fully dependent on her, that they should be able to do whatever they want with them, whether it be terminate their lives or not. And to that, we would point to them and say that dependency is not really a good argument. For example, my 2-month-old is still dependent on my wife, and so are all my other kids. They're dependent on us. But just because they're dependent on us, it doesn't mean that we have the right to terminate their lives. And in the same sense, just because the baby inside of its mother is fully dependent on her does not mean that we should have the right to terminate their lives. Not only that, but we also have elderly people who are dependent on others and people with disabilities. But just because they're dependent on other people, it does not give us the right to be able to terminate their lives. So to recap, the size, the level of development, the environment that you're in, and dependency level does not determine whether or not you're a human with intrinsic value. And so all those arguments fall short. So I hope this video helped, and if you haven't done so, subscribe and hit that bell icon. That way you get notifications when I drop new videos. Till next time, God bless.